Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another review from Fanboys Forever. Today we're going to be having a look at the brand new Masterverse New Eternia King Randor figure. So this is a release I've been really excited about, certainly one that I didn't expect. I actually thought before we ever got this guy that we would probably see a version of him from, say, Masters Universe Revolution, since he had a pretty expanded role in the beginning of that series. However, no, much to my surprise, they went with the New Eternia route, which I think is quite a bit more exciting. Of course, New Eternia is their series where they can kind of do expanded classic concepts, often including the parts, though, to where you can kind of switch it out and make it as classic or as revisionist as you would like it to be. And this is no exception, so I can't wait to get into it. But before we begin, if you haven't subscribed, to go ahead and do so, and of course like the video at the end if you've enjoyed the content today. Also, don't forget to leave a comment and let me know what you think about this guy. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's begin. So looking at King Randor here, we can see that he has the usual pomp that they add to their incredible packaging designs. Of course, he has the new Masterverse logo there, and this incredible painting here on the front, which is an even more classic looking Randor. You can see he is fighting this yellow monster here, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on. However, in the backdrop, you can see that this is meant to be a younger Randor, because we have He-Man's mother back here. That's right, it's Queen Marlena. She, of course, came from Earth as an astronaut and crash landed in Eternia. And I think that this is really cool. It's showing Randor in his younger days as kind of a warrior king. And of course, if we look back here, we can see some of the different features of the figure, including the switchable hair pieces. All right, let's read their revisionist take. King Randor leads his royal forces across New Eternia, searching for the lost power of Grayskull and spreading good across the planet, earning him the nickname the King Abroad. All right, sure, why not, right? All right, here's the other figures, of course, that we'll see here on the channel. And you can see that we have a couple of different looks for Randor. We have classic kind of Filmation long hair Randor, and we have bald Randor, so you can totally do either one. Maybe they're trying to say that this is just a wig. Who knows? All right, guys, let's go ahead and check them out. You have to love this kind of royal blue background that they have here in the packaging and this blue baggie, so I think that's pretty cool. And here he is in the form that he came packaged in. It's King Randor. So let's have a look. First of all, this appears that he's kind of packaged in more of his, I guess, battle gear that he would use, like, say, during a war or something like that. I really like the design of the helmet up here. It very much has that kind of Arthurian sort of look to it. It does look like something you would have seen portrayed in old artwork or something of King Arthur and his knights, or something of the Knights Templar, something like that, that you're kind of used to seeing represented throughout that time period. Also, I love how ornate all of the battle armor really is, especially this big kind of pauldron right here, the shoulder pad, and of course the intricate detailing on the armor itself with the crosses and the gold finish. And on the back, that even extends back here with detail they probably didn't actually have to provide, but they did anyway. I love the belt right here with the cross and the blue gems and things. I will say they've not skimped on paint on this guy, because even back here you have these kind of jewels that are encrusted into the belt. Down here we do have the kind of orangey tights, and we have the shin guards that are gold with the red straps. So all kinds of little details, little extra things they didn't have to do, but they all go a long way in making the figure just have that regal kind of detailed quality. Of course, I see some movie inspiration here as well. Kind of has that sort of look that we've seen maybe in some of the Hobbit movies for some of the kingly armors we saw in those. Not only that, but he does have a soft goods cape that is completely removable, and I really love the gimmick on how this is actually put on the figure and how it's taken off, and we'll of course get into all of that. I also think that this feels very traditional. Like, it doesn't feel like a big leap that the changes that they've made, it doesn't feel like they're really strange or that they've kind of done anything too crazy. So I really do appreciate that he's still very recognizably King Randor. Also, I will go ahead and show you that the helmet is completely removable. This isn't just him without the intended hairpiece. They do intend for this to be older King Randor, who is now bald or has shaved his head, whatever you want to say. This does end up giving the figure kind of a Graham McTavish look, and he's an excellent actor. it does definitely kind of have that look. A little weird for me because, you know, I'm certainly used to Randor having hair, but, you know, still. Perhaps he's a little young looking though in the face and maybe needed a little bit more lines going, at least on the forehead and things, to suggest that he was a little older. We certainly do have the gray detail on the beard to suggest he is slightly older here. It almost feels to me like the designers maybe originally had in mind that he would actually have another head with a beard that did not have that gray in it, because that seems to be what the art suggests. But who knows, maybe that wasn't the intention after all. I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like if we put on his kingly hairpiece here, his royal wig. And honestly, this is probably how I'm going to keep the figure. I just think that looks a lot more like the King Randor that I'm familiar with, and probably what 99% of the people watching this are familiar with. So it's definitely going to be the mode that I keep him in. I just think it looks great. There's no reason not to have this hairpiece on. You can also kind of adjust it and kind of make his forehead, I guess, as tall or as short as you want it to be. It probably looks better that way. I probably had it a little too high up a moment ago. So one thing that I've been noticing about the head is that the hairpiece a lot of the time doesn't really want to set, and the crown doesn't really want to set the way that is shown on the back of the box. So if you look at the back of the packaging, you can see that the head looks significantly better in my opinion, because the crown sets lower and of course the face is painted there. The head ends up looking quite different. For one thing, the hair and the beard are painted a lighter brown, which I wish would have come through in the actual figure. But I think that a lot of this is to do with the piece up here not really wanting to naturally set as low as it shows on the back. See, the truth is, if it was setting like it was on the back, this is how it would look. And you can see that this is a much better match for what is actually on the back of the packaging. Now the thing is though, as you can see, as soon as you remove your finger, it kind of wants to ride up a little bit. So I feel like this is something that I could alter by simply stretching it over the head and then heating it and then cooling it back down so that the hairpiece and crown would kind of hold its shape and stay in this configuration, which I believe is the correct way that it's supposed to be. So you've seen me do a trick like this for longtime viewers of the channel on He-Man's head, and so I feel like it could be done again, only to make this fit a little more naturally. So this is him in his kingly armor. He also has a kingly scepter right here that he can utilize. And I love the details on this. It even has a little crown on it. So narcissistic much, King Randor? Anyway, though, there is a really cool surprise with this. I noticed that there was a peg on the bottom of his sword hilt. And of course, there's a peg hole right here. And he can create this kind of staff thing that has the sword on one end and his scepter on the other. So this is when you know the king means business, when he takes this thing out. Playtime's over. As for this, I'm sure that we can come up with some fun uses for this on other figures. So I definitely want to show you a couple of the other options that we have. As I mentioned earlier, you can take this cape off. It does peg in right here. So if you pull this up, you can see that there's a little peg and you can actually see the place where it goes in. And the same over here. Okay. And now all you have to do, you don't even have to remove the head to take this off. And you can totally have him without it. So if you want more of maybe a battle-ready look without the cape, you can do that. The holes aren't too horribly noticeable up here and just looks like maybe that they're parts of the armor. You can see that if you fool around with it too much, the hairpiece will come right off. If you do want to see what he looks like in bald mode with this, there you go. But not only that, you can also take this shoulder strap off. To do it is a little more involved than you may initially think. You do have to take this hand off, I guess, might be one of the easier ways. And you could just take this whole assembly and work it down. So you can see that the kind of bracelets that he's wearing, they come off as well. And so we can put those right back on. The cool thing is I believe these are reuses of the ones that He-Man can have. So you can totally swap those on to He-Man if you need them for some of the other versions. And here he is without the cape or the shoulder pads. So you can totally do that as well. You know, for me, if I want to get him to the most kind of iconic version or the most classic version of King Randor, I would probably do it like this. And here he is, and probably what is the most traditional version you could do. All right, so yeah, you could totally do it like this. You can see that we have this rig off of there. And yeah, it's just more of your basic king look, I guess, like this. And I think that looks terrific. However, if you want to go even further, you can totally remove these shin guards too. You can see that they just peg in down here. So you just take these straps and remove each. And if you want that Randor to be just as classic as you can possibly get him, I suppose then that this would be your best option. And with the staff also looking very classical, of course we have a sword on the top. I think maybe the last bit of customization it would have needed was maybe to be able to remove that blade so that you could just have more of just the cross scepter or staff. But you know, hey, I get it. And I like what they did. At least they had the option to connect it like that. All right, let's definitely do a little comparison. I don't have his scepter out, so you'll forgive me. Here he is with the Origins version. And you can see that they're a pretty good facsimile to one another, honestly, all things considered. So I definitely think they look good. You can see that this guy kind of gets away from the tired old idea of him just, you know, looking too much like the Burger King, I guess, like the mascot. And I feel like it kind of gets away from that, even in its more traditional form here. So I do appreciate that. Here he is beside a younger flashback 2000X Randor, I guess, from the flashback episode with him fighting Keldor. I guess that's what this would mostly be based on. Here he is beside of King Grayskull. Be sure to leave a angry comment down below about how upset this version of King Grayskull makes you, because it seems like he's the easiest trigger in the world to get that free engagement down there in the comments. And just in case you missed him, here he is again. We have two kings right here of Eternia. So make sure you get really upset. Of course, you know that I'm a huge collector of Masters of the Universe classics. But you can see here he's with the Eternos Palace version of King Randor. And here he is with just the regular old classics version. And you know, in terms of scale, they're fairly similar. Of course, with a lot of Masterverse figures, they end up being a little larger in height anyway than the old classics figures. However, you know, I think it would be fair to say that this does call to attention, you know, that this head sculpt is a little bit more generic than what we had seen with the other King Randors. It's not quite as iconic. He definitely looks more like a regular guy. So I definitely think that that is something to be aware of. I think for me, maybe the thing that's doing it is that the skin here is just plastic and these are paint, and there's definitely a difference in that. But you know, still, I think he holds his own pretty well. Here he is beside of his questionably intentioned brother, Keldor, and I think they match up really well, even if they're not from the same continuities. And never let it be said that I don't cover my bases. Just for fun, here is his son as the future king of Eternia, King He-Man. I certainly hope that this is something that we eventually get a Masterverse version of. He is one of my favorites of the old classics figures, so I think that it would be awesome to see the new regime at Mattel tackle this guy. In terms of articulation, I am certainly not going to bore my audience, who's already used to my long-winded reviews anyway, with trying to go over every aspect of this guy. It's exactly the same as the most recent He-Man bodies that we've seen. This rubber overlay is just over the newer He-Man chest setup, but it doesn't really limit things very much. So just know that you can still do quite a bit of flexing there, and that diaphragm joint still works. As for anything else, it pretty much isn't very limited at all. So I think you can pretty much do whatever you need to do, and he has the drop-down hips. So that really helps with posing as well. Just know that as you work with a figure that you are going to have the hairpiece and the crown come off. So he's going to be a little more bald than you might wish for him to be in those moments. In terms of quality control issues, the sword was warped a little bit out of the packaging, and there is a tiny bit of paint scuffing here on the side. Other than that, maybe the joint tolerance for this ankle down here isn't quite as tight as the other, but overall it's a pretty good showing. All right, so final thoughts on this guy. Hey, it's another big win for the Masterverse series. Just another great addition to this collection. I don't necessarily think that he replaces or usurps maybe the best King Randors that we've gotten, which would probably be the Masters of the Universe Classics one. He's definitely more functional than those are, you know, and of course the articulation is quite stiff. Although good in concept, maybe not so great in execution. This guy can do a lot of the things that guy couldn't. Not only that, but this guy is a lot more exciting when it comes to the accessories and some of the customization options. You've seen all the cool options that you have with this guy where you can make him look really classic, and you can even give him that new bald look or replace it with the new kind of Lord of the Rings kind of battle crown, I guess. All of these are just fantastic options, and I think they all look really nice, and it leads me to not knowing exactly how to display them, which is a great problem to have. I could see some hardcore collectors that have more money than I do buying more than one of these guys so that you can kind of display both looks simultaneously. I would love to see some kind of palace diorama to give him some sort of throne to set in. I do think that he is capable of it, since this is kind of a rubbery piece, so I don't think you should have much trouble there. Of course, this guy will set you back about $25 or so, depending on what retailer you go with, although I do expect with the current economic climate that these prices will probably be climbing to more around $30, so that is a real shame, but unfortunately something that Mattel nor, well, much of anyone else can help at this time. I got mine from Big Bad Toy Store. Of course, that's not any kind of paid endorsement or anything, just telling you who I like to do business with, because I found their customer service to be incredibly reliable. I do know that people who had pre-ordered from Entertainment Earth got this guy quite a while back, so I'm aware that Big Bad is falling behind a little bit in terms of getting this stuff as fast as Entertainment Earth does. But again, you know, when I can, I really would much rather deal with Big Bad Toy Store. You know, it's interesting, King Randor here is going to be kind of the anchor figure for this wave of 3, kind of being the He-Man of the wave, the hero character. And I think that it's a fine figure to do that with. I think he's very eye-catching. I definitely think that he's an incredibly iconic figure. And here's some of New Eternia's mightiest defenders ready to do battle. I think He-Man would be proud of his dear old dad. And of course, he'd be nothing less than thrilled to go into battle with him in this brand new form. And of course, I think you'd be remiss if you don't pick this guy up. I love doing Masterverse reviews these days because I just, you know, I hate negativity, and I try to avoid it whenever possible, although to hear some of the comments in some of my ranking videos, according to them, I guess I'm one of the most negative fans on the internet. But seriously, I hate negativity, and it's great to be able to have figures that you can really just gush over and talk about just how incredible they truly are. And it's so nice to see a company like Mattel putting nothing but love and true effort into making these some of the best versions of the character that you can get. And like I said, if not for maybe the head sculpt being slightly more generic than I would like, I think it would be easy to call this probably the best King Randor figure that has been released to date. And with all that being said, I certainly hope that you've enjoyed the review today. I know I've really enjoyed filming it and, of course, posing this guy around for you. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of this guy, and let me know if you're going to be adding him to your Masters collection. And as always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.